So today we've invited Doug and Pat Ralls to come and share, and they're gonna come up here. They've been longtime church members here at BMC, and we're really excited for them to come and share their story and share about the dangers of distracted driving. So if you can welcome them, we're really excited to have them here this morning. And with our poll question, we always ask a poll question every Sunday, and so the question, it might have seemed kind of heavy, but it relates to the content that they'll be sharing about this morning. So the poll was, how many drivers in the United States are killed each year due to distracted driving? And the answers ranged really, really wide, from anywhere from 1,000 to 150,000 that you guys guessed. Most people thought it was somewhere in that range, and the correct answer is 6,000. 6,000 people every year in our country are killed because of distracted driving, and they'll be sharing a little bit more about that today. So we're excited to have them and hear what they have to say.
I've never done this before with glaring lights. You look good. Oh, thanks. I have no idea what you look like. It's really great to be here, and before I was blinded, I was really excited to see all of you here, but especially there are people here who have really helped us through this year and a half that are really, you all make a difference. Those of you who don't know us and those of you who do, so thank you very much. We ready here? Sure. All right, well, I'd like to start by telling you about October 28th, 2009. Brian, our son, had graduated from the University of Florida with in May. So he was at home looking for a job after that, and he found a job. And so he was coming downstairs at 6:15 in the morning, looking gorgeous in his suit and tie. And we had breakfast together, and then as he was going out the door, I said to him, "Brian, I'll be thinking of you." And then, at about 2 o'clock, I was walking the dog and going out the front door, and the state troopers were out in front of our home. And they approached me and they said, "Are you Brian Rawls' mother?" And I said, yes, I am. And they had looks on their faces like, I don't know if you have seen movies where someone comes to the home of a service person who was killed, and they just have the look of death and sorrow on their faces, and that's what these men looked like. And the difference here, though, is this is something that was 100% preventable.
Well, the first reaction any parent has when they get that news is one of disbelief, and then it comes home to roost. And the troopers did tell us that Brian had been killed in a car accident out on Interstate 40 right near Lebanon, Tennessee. So we asked them what happened, and she said, they said, this young woman was driving along the interstate, and she just lost control of her car and crossed over the median and hit Brian head on. And he was killed instantly. So he said, how does somebody lose control to that degree? And they said, she was distracted by her cell phone. And we just were so clueless about this. How can somebody be so distracted by their cell phone they lose control of their car to that degree, to cross over the median? So we started doing some research, and after a few weeks, and just because we wanted to know how that happened, we found a few things out which we'd like to share with you today. A lot of people think it's safe to drive and use their cell phone. If you think that's the case, then you're just as safe going out and driving with a 0.08 blood alcohol content, which is driving under the influence. If the police pull you over, give you the breathalyzer test, it comes up 0.08, they put the handcuffs on, you go to jail. Statistics and studies time after time after time have shown that the incidence of accidents and your slowness and reaction time are the same just being on your phone as with driving with a 0.08 blood alcohol content. How about texting? Well, I can do that. I don't even have to look when I text. Unfortunately, that's equivalent in terms of accidents to driving with a 0.15 blood alcohol content. That's really dangerous activity. Really dangerous activity. Okay, we know it's illegal to text in the state of Tennessee. We see people doing it all the time, but it's illegal. It's against the law, right? Everybody knows that. So, but it's not against the law to talk on cell phones. Can we at least do that? The problem is the more crashes occur because people were talking on their cell phones than crashes occur because people are texting. Because it's so much more common activity, people don't even think about it. In fact, 7 times as many crashes occur because people are on their cell phone than texting. Okay, well, how about hands-free? Bluetooth, the little thing we have in our car, headphone, all that. No. There's no statistical difference. It surprises a lot of people, but there's no difference at all between the crash incidents for people who are just talking on their headset or using a Bluetooth. The reason is, it's great. It's great to have your hands, both hands on the wheel. It's great to have your eyes on the road, but it's not so much about that as it is about what your brain is doing. And our brains aren't made to do 2 complex tasks at any one time. And driving a car is a complex task. Having a cell phone conversation is a complex task. People who we talk to about this say, well, that's the first thing I do when I get in the car is I turn on my cell phone because I don't have anything else to do. Really? 2.5-ton vehicle driving at 70 miles an hour down the interstate, you don't think that's something to do? Okay, well. Anyway, so additional facts, and these are all, these are just summaries of things you can find online. I mean, there's been dozens of studies on all of this, but the National Safety Council estimates that about 28% of crashes in our country, that's 1.6 million crashes a year, can be attributed to cell phone talking and texting while driving. That's a bunch. 200,000 of those are due to texting, while 1.4 million are due to phone calls. So again, there's that 7 times ratio. 6,000 people approximately died in 2008 in crashes involving a distracted or inattentive driver, and more than 500,000 were injured. And the worst offenders, unfortunately, are those young men and women under 20 years of age, because they're less experienced, they use their cell phones, they text more often. It's the leading cause of death, auto accidents, for people your age, by far, by far. As I said, there's lots more information out there. If you're interested, you can go look it up, but I mean, don't believe me on this stuff. But it's not just about all these facts and probability. This is kind of boring. It's stuff you need to know because it kind of drives the point home. But it's really very personal as well.
Okay, I'm not suggesting you do this at this moment, but if you were to take your cell phone out of wherever you keep it and look at the last text that you sent, do you suppose it would be something that was worth somebody's life? Probably not. What if, when you were driving your vehicle, you did the same thing that this 19-year-old girl did who killed our son? Think about what her life is like right now, knowing that she took someone's life who was precious and who could have contributed to this world in a huge way. Or think about if this were your parents standing up here having to do this. I can guarantee you that is a sorrow that you do not want to inflict. So please, listen.
You know, you've all been driving along the interstate when you see it's really backed up and you say, oh, well, it's either they're doing some road construction or it's some big accident. Well, when there's a big accident, that's what they do. I mean, they basically shut the interstate down and they do investigations, and one of those is a written report that requires interviews with the people who are involved. And so they interviewed this young woman who caused the accident, who had just turned 19 a couple of weeks before. She said, oh, she was interviewed in the hospital. She said, I was driving down the road and then my phone rang. And I reached for it And the next thing I knew, I was on the other side of the interstate. So maybe 2 or 3 seconds was all this took. You know, and she said, well, I don't use she even said, I don't normally use my cell phone when I'm in my car. I know it's dangerous, but even the reaching of it and being distracted for that 2 or 3 seconds devastated her life, took our son's life, changed our lives forever. So you really have to think whether it's worth it or not. You know, we all think this is going to be somebody else. We know the statistics. Statistics are one thing, but I want to assure you, if it can happen to us, it can happen to you. It can happen to someone in your family. It can happen to someone you love very much. That really brings it home. This movement's really growing in dramatic ways. Lots more publicity, a lot more people are learning about this. Lots of people do this kind of thing that we're doing today all over the country. The Pat will tell you about a specific story.
Doug actually designed these bumper stickers that we have. They're blue and orange for Florida colors. They say, distracted driving kills. If you're driving, hang up your phone. And there's a picture of Brian on the side. Now, we're happy to give one of these to anybody who is willing to put one on their car and abide by it. I have this little dream about Brentwood being covered with these and having it be the safest place on earth, but anyway. But some people are not willing to make that commitment, and or they're not bumper sticker people. So I have a very good friend who was not a bumper sticker person, but then she was driving her daughter to UT, and she was in the fast lane on the freeway, and a huge truck barreled over right at her. And you can imagine this. She had, and it was in a spot that had the concrete barrier on her left-hand side. So it was a very delicate situation in which she had to have full control of her mind and her hands. And she said it occurred to her that had she been on her phone or holding her phone, there was no way that that would have turned out the same. So she asked for a bumper sticker, and she put it in her rear window. She didn't mean to do this, but now when she looks in her rear view mirror, she sees Brian's face through the bumper sticker, and it serves as a very powerful reminder to just leave the phone, put it in your purse, put it in your trunk, just don't use it.
Today there are 9 states that ban the use of handheld devices completely while you're driving. There are another 5 others that have partial bans. That is, you can't drive under graduated driver's license, which is what our state is, or in a construction zone or school zone, something like that. 30 states ban texting while driving, and another 7 have partial bans. But honestly, you know, human laws are broken all the time, right? Nobody ever has gone over the speed limit here, right? No. I know I haven't. This is not about laws, because frankly, we see these laws, the texting law being broken all the time. It's hard to enforce, for that matter. It's really, though, time for you to make a difference. It's time, this is about personal responsibility and personal accountability. And I think as human beings, and particularly as Christians, we have an obligation to live beyond human law and to do the right thing. And this is about personal accountability. A lot of people don't know this information. We didn't know this information before we looked it up and started doing research. And when you don't know any better, it's just about ignorance. You can't get mad at somebody because they're ignorant. But once you know this stuff, and once you know how dangerous it is, it's an accountability issue. Brian was in high school a lot like you or your friends. He loved sports. He was a good football player. That was probably his favorite sport. His senior year, he actually won the state meet in the discus throw. He was fortunate enough to do that, and that's, if you've ever seen the movie The Blind Side, people see that? Yeah, that's Michael Orr standing right next to him. Michael was the favorite that year, but Brian got off a really good throw and beat him. It was a good day in his life, and ours too. It was fun. That's Brian in graduation. He's second from the right, with his arms around a couple of his buddies there. His friend there on the left just actually got married not long ago, and Brian was to have been his best man at his wedding, but he wasn't able to do that. So what they did instead was they had a candle burning on the altar in Brian's place. So that's Brian and Pat. A couple, 3-4 summers ago, I think, and we were out at a wedding at my niece's wedding in California, and it just was a good picture and kind of shows Brian as he was. That's Brian's car on October 28, 2009, the blue car. You can see how devastating this accident was because of that 2-second distraction. Brian's remains are in the prayer garden here at this church, in the columbarium. Not something we ever envisioned for our son. Someone at the age of 23 should not be there, and really should not be there. So, what can you do now? What can you do? First of all, take the pledge personally to not use your cell phone in your car. This is not that hard. I know it's almost addictive behavior. It's an addiction you need to break. And if you're interested, there's a great app for it. It's called the off button. Every phone has it. You don't have to pay for it. It's really easy to use, but just don't use your phone at all. And talk to your family, talk to your friends about this. Not everybody knows this information. I was talking with someone before this, and we were sharing that emotion of once you know this information, you get a little upset when you see somebody using their phone, and particularly texting when they're driving. But you can't talk and educate them at the time. But the more that you share this message with others, the better off, the safer we're all going to be. Because Brian wasn't on his phone. Brian wasn't breaking any traffic laws. He was just driving along the road and was killed by someone who was. And stay informed. As I said, this is just a few of the facts. And if you're of that mindset, you can go online and look at this information. A couple of great websites are distraction.gov and nsc.org. That's the National Safety Council. They've got lots of data on this. We've also got a Facebook page if you're interested with links to lots of information, etc. And that's Stop Phoning and Driving in Memory of Brian. So if you're interested, you can look things up there. But it's an emotional thing for us. This is not some hobby for us. We'd rather be doing anything than this. So, but thanks for your attention. Thanks for listening, and I hope it makes a difference. So, I think we have time for some questions. Okay. Any questions at all anyone has that we can answer? We're not technical experts, but. Talking on a cell phone is not the most distracting thing that can happen in your car. Things that are more distracting are a flying insect or your tuna casserole sliding off the front seat. The problem is that about 20% of people in their cars are on their phone. Not a high percentage have flying insects. So it's the prevalence of the activity that causes so many of these accidents and deaths. It's not the relative danger. And the death rate for motor vehicle accidents in America is way down over the last 50 years. Way, way down. And the reason for that is some of the technological improvements that have gone into cars. Let's think about seatbelts, DUI laws, airbags, all those. So some technological changes have helped a lot in terms of safety and driving. The problem with cell phone use, texting and cell phone use, is that the incidence is rising, not dropping. And if the trends continue within the next 7 years, this will be the #1 cause of deaths in motor vehicle accidents passing drunk driving. So that just kind of tells you the arc of this problem. Texting is more distracting, there's no question. I think the confusion lies, and you see what a lot of the car companies are doing now are really pushing, hands-free, and their mantra is, hands on the wheel, eyes on the road. The studies show that that's not the real issue. The real issue is what your brain is doing. And this whole area of cognitive distraction is where most of the study is being done. And that's not something you can change with technology.
Were there any consequences for the driver?
Well, sure. She's got to live with the knowledge that through her carelessness she killed someone. She has some physical injuries, which she's over now. Legally, she got a $50 fine. A $50 fine. I don't even want to get into that issue. But. In terms of law, yeah, it's interesting. We had a meeting with our state senator. One of his lines was, Tennesseans love their liberties. What I wanted to say was not what I did say. What I wanted to say was, do you believe they should have the liberty to drive drunk too? Then, to what point can you take those liberties? To the point of killing our son on the interstate? Does that make you happy? So yeah, but there's a huge hump we need to get over. And what I said to Senator Johnson was, you know what it's going to take, Senator? It's going to take someone in the Senate or the Assembly to lose one of their children, or to lose someone they love for this to get any action. That's become very clear to me. And it's not a matter of if it happens. It's a matter of when it happens, because it will happen. So we'll be back to see you when that happens, because we've got some very good ideas for a law. But it's not about the law. We can't do anything about that right now. We can save a lot of lives by just taking personal accountability.
I want to say I do have one of your stickers, but I don't know if you've made it clear to them that that sticker also comes with a piece of paper, which was really shocking to me. And I've taken that piece of paper really seriously. And it's the pledge of what you're talking about. So I'd like you to probably tell them a little bit about that. And the other thing is, I've told my kids, and I've got two of them, one going to the University of Florida, that their cell phones are not for them to talk to their friends. It's for me to get a hold of them. And unfortunately, I think the fear of mom is worse than the fear of anything else on that road. And I realized very quickly that I was calling my kids to pick things up at the store, and because of the fear of mom, they were answering their cell phones while driving, and they wouldn't answer it for a friend. So I didn't even realize that, and I've had to tell them, do not ignore this is the only time you can ignore your mom. Do not pick up that phone.
That's a great point, Kim. And yeah, parents use that as a tool to keep track of where their kids are, because it's very useful. And parents will yell at their kids sometimes. You didn't pick up the phone when I called you. You say, Mom, I was driving. Oh yeah, right. But you know how that goes, right? But yeah, this is a whole attitudinal change in society. But yeah, the pledge itself is important. When we do this at high schools, we take them and have them sign a pledge if they want to. We don't, it's not a requirement, but basically it's about respecting life, and about, life is a God-given thing. It's not something we've earned. It's something that's been given to us, and we need to have respect for that. We need to have respect for our own lives. We need to have respect for other people's lives as well.
On the bright side, we have learned from doing this that there's actually a real estate company, Frederick and Clark, that prohibits their real estate agents from using the phone in the car, which, that's a pretty big deal for somebody in that business. Also, a drug company does the same thing. So, we're right at the beginning here, and we're having an opportunity to do now what we're probably going to be required to do, somewhere down the line, because it makes sense and it preserves lives.
There are a lot of people in here who aren't driving age, and a lot of parents who have kids who aren't driving age yet. What would you say to them? Because they're in cars, but they're not driving them.
Set a good example. That's the main thing.
And I would also challenge someone who doesn't drive to examine the way that they use their phone. It doesn't have to be attached to your hip, and it doesn't have to be like a friend. It can be a means of communication, but it's not your only connection to reality. Just try not using a phone for a week and see what that feels like.
Okay.
Well, in a car.
In a car, yeah. Cell phones are great tools. Cell phones are great tools, right? I use a cell phone all the time. But I use a hammer all the time too, but I don't use it in my car. Yeah, I used to use an MIT study as part of the presentation, but I saw people's eyes glaze over when I did it, so I took that out. But you're absolutely right. Nobody can do it, and people say, well, I can walk and I can chew gum at the same time. Well, driving the car is slightly more complex than chewing gum. But thank you for that point. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. People think they can. And by the way, human psychology is an interesting thing. They did a poll recently that I read that said, they polled the entire U.S. driving population and said, are you in the top half in terms of skill level as a driver? Just in the top half. 97% of the people said yes. Okie dokie. But that just speaks to what we think we can do and what we really can't do.
Doug and Pat, have you heard from the young lady who caused the accident?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to talk about it?
We did not hear from her for a long time, but you also don't know how much of that is because some lawyer tells her she can't, or because I kept putting myself in her place thinking, what do you say? I would want to say something, but then when you come right down to writing it on a piece of paper, that's a hard one. So anyway, we communicated with her initially.
Basically, her father, who was actually, after the city police was the first one at the accident site, because she called him, found out who we were and contacted our church just to express his concern and sorrow and all that. But we didn't hear from her. She was injured. She was in the hospital, for a while too. But so we didn't hear for a few months, anything from her or from her family or anything. And so we eventually wrote her a letter and sent it as an attachment to a letter that we'd written to her dad, who was one we did have contact with, and tried to express to her that we forgave her, that we held no ill will. We knew she didn't do it on purpose. And to the father, we held no ill will for his daughter, because as a father myself, with a daughter who was around that age at the time, I'd have been concerned. There's people out there who would not react well to something like this. So we wanted them to be sure that we weren't people like that. They were going through enough, and so we wrote a letter to her. Then I'm going to the detail because it's personal, obviously, but essentially saying that we forgave her, we wished her the best in the rest of her life. If there was some redemption that might come out of this, we had some ideas, but we didn't hear from her directly or her father again until all the insurance mess, and Pat alluded to this, was taken care of, and that took over a year. then we did get a letter from her expressing how she thinks about this every day, how sorry she was. She knew she could never make it up to us. And it just, what do you say? So.
Does she have a sticker on her car?
I don't know.
I don't think she probably knows about him.
Yeah, my impression is she's got her own demons to get over.
She'd be a powerful testimony.
Yeah, there are people. In fact, there's a national organization that's patterned after MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It's called Focus Driven. Just started really a little over a year ago, and the founder of that is a woman whose mother was killed by a person on their cell phone. Just ran through red light, never saw it. But another young man, but he is out there speaking to people and saying, I caused this to happen. I caused someone else's death. That takes an enormous amount of courage to do that.
We just want to say thank you to you guys for being here today and for doing this. And I think it takes an enormous amount of courage for you guys to do this, so thank you.
Let me speak to that just for 1 second, if I could. And the courage that we have to do it is by, if you don't understand how the Holy Spirit works through people, and how you really are the hands, the feet, the heart of Christ on earth, you see that for real when you go through something like this. The people that surround you with that kind of love, they're not representing Christ, they are Christ.